I would like to discuss further about power struggle in relationship and how a power struggle in relationship reveals inner child conflict. So in our childhood, we get to experience the human condition. And the human condition is the same for all of us. Either we were raised in China, raised in India, raised in North America, South America. The human condition is emotional pain, feelings of not being good enough, and shame. And this is all, we are all collectively experiencing the human condition. And it is very heavy on us in the childhood because from 0 to 5, 5 to 9, we are most sensitive. Our inner child is our most authentic, radiant, creative, and expansive version of self. It is the self I call creative discovery. Creative discovery is what we all desire in our relationships because it makes our relationships creative, expansive, masterful, playful, courageous, and it brings about this authentic bond, fulfilling intimacy. And we all desire creative discovery in our relationships. We want to bring the best out of our partner, right? But in order to bring the best out of our partner, we need to bring the best out of ourselves. As Alan Watts has said, to improve another is to be improved. You cannot improve another without being improved yourself, right? So the inner child is our most refined state. When we're very enthusiastic, we're fearless, our self-esteem is at all-time high, and we're a dreamer. I call the inner child spirituality of the inner visionary. And those are powerful words, spirituality, visionary. And that's everything what the inner child is about. The inner child is expanding beyond the past and the patterns of the past and the identities and the personas and the personalities that are of the past. The inner child, just like children, they're all about movement. They want to move. They want to grow. They want to excel, right? But us as adults, we can get very rigid, we can get very hard, and we can really get into a lack mentality in all areas of our life, where we get triggered, right, by our partner, by something in ourselves that's mirrored in our partner, and we stagnate, right? We stagnate, and that can be seen as a delay, a procrastination. It can be considered as a blockage, right? Where we start to feel sexually, we're blocked, and they're blocked emotionally, psychologically. We can just feel that we're closed off or they're closed off. And as adults, that can be so frustrating, right? A lot of adults have a lot of built up frustration inside of them because they are not expressing their true nature, and they want so badly to express their true nature, which is the inner child, right? Our most expansive, creative, and enthusiastic self, right? Our dreamer self, our visionary self, our spiritual self. But what happens is that the childhood pain associated with the human condition, that is shame, emotional pain, and feelings of not being good enough, it creates this deep fear within us, right? And that fear is going to vary depending on what kind of childhood we had, or in what kind of geographic region we live in, and the whole culture, and just the whole sort of, some areas, the human condition of shame, emotional pain, and feelings of not being good enough are a lot more amplified in certain areas of the planet. Right? It feels a lot more heavy on the psyche of the inner child. So the inner child is a gift. It's a gift that's given to us to help us better love ourselves, have unconditional love for ourselves, and to have a practice of self. a practice of self. And that's what children are all about. They're in a practice of the self. They want to learn who they are and what they want, right? They have an intention. They have a charisma. They have this intuition, right? The whole life of the children is all about a practice of self. Like, I want to know who I am. I want to know what I want. I want to have an intention. I want to be charismatic and bold and fearless. And I want to be intuitive, right? I want to be in the earth. I want to be outside. I want to climb trees. I want to learn the bees and the bears and the deer, right? There's a sense of a dreamer, right? Imagination. Children like, I am imagining this world. I'm imagining realities. And for teenagers who are starting to get into the adult world, can get into drugs because they want to continue that sort of, I want to see into realities beyond this reality, right, of the human condition. I want to see into realities, other dimensions. I want to experience other realities, higher realities, other dimensions. And when you begin to lose that inner child, right, that spirituality of the inner visionary as a teenager, you can try to cope with that, right? Cope with that disconnect through drugs, right? Because as a teenager, you deeply want to still be connected to your higher imagination, right? Because higher imagination makes a teen it brings about this just high self-esteem and the sense of sovereignty and freedom and independence of mind. And it just brings about this overall higher creativity, right? And with higher creativity, you tend to have a deeper breath, a deeper energy. You tend to be more of a go-getter. You tend to have more of a determination, more grit, and just overall stamina and vitality. But when you lose your imagination, when you lose your creativity, your vitality starts to lower, your confidence, your self-esteem. And a lot of teens, they fit in, they feel like empty, or there's voids, they just feel incomplete, or they feel like there's something off or something missing within them. So they try to cope with that or try to fill up these sort of missing pieces of them with drugs that give them this altered state of consciousness, right? This sort of gives them this sort of brain chemistry that gets them the sensation of connecting with realities beyond the human condition or the restriction that the human condition is. It restricts us, right? As long as we're caught in trauma, we're going to be restricted, and we're not going to truly be able to excel and truly be able to be creative as long as the trauma is holding us back and closing us off from really stepping up and becoming strong, right? Stronger and moving beyond the past and moving into sort of revolutionizing our idea, our mindset, our beliefs, and just the way we live, right? So the power struggle in relationship is basically, a relationship is a mirror, and it's mirroring to us the inner child conflict, right? And the person, our partner, triggers us because the divine, in order for us to experience higher love, right? To give and take higher love with a sense of creative discovery rather than trigger, stagnate, right? Is we have to uncover these repressed this emotional pain and shame and feelings of not being good enough in order to ignite, right? Discover, ignite this practice of self. And once we really begin this practice of self, we're going to start to see our relationships are going to evolve, right? The relationships of power struggle, and that's all that it is. Right? We're going to start to see that we're going to level up from that, right? And our partnerships are going to gradually become more about creative collaboration rather than power struggle, right? Where creative collaboration is about two individuals who both have a practice of self, and they're working together to build an expansive life of prosperity, reciprocity, and higher creativity. Right? And that's what we all want. That's what we all want, right? We want to build prosperity, creativity, and reciprocity in a relationship that gives us a sense of spiritual victory rather than power struggle, trigger, stagnate, where we don't express ourselves anymore. We don't talk. The relationship's dead, and we're just kind of going by the motions because we have kids, but then eventually we divorce because the kids just aren't enough to keep us together, right? The power struggle just creates a huge, we're closed off, that our sexuality with each other becomes like a blockage, right? It's hard for us to connect because it's like the big elephant in the room is the trigger that stagnated the relationship. And over time, the stagnant relationship basically stripped the relationship of all creative discovery, all sense of nourishment, care, and kind of left the relationship kind of in a place of death, like a decomposition state, right? So that's what power struggle, and a lot of people are in that, where it's just, you're looking in the mirror of this person and you just feel kind of like, you just feel like this is just, something feels off, something feels incomplete, something doesn't feel entirely satisfying or fulfilling. And it's really the mirror showing you, right? Showing you and how there's something in you that you want to fill up, right? There's something in you that you need to feel more whole within yourself, right? You need to feel more whole. There's something, you want to know who you are and what you want, right? And when you look at your partner and you don't feel like you're expanding with them, or there's this creative collaboration or the sense of reciprocity or prosperity in it, it just really it's revealing to you that it's time to create a practice of self where you can really know who you are and know what you want, right? So that there isn't confusion, there isn't conflict, there isn't this sort of disconnect or this sort of unexpressed energy, feelings in the relationship. So the power struggle is revealing an inner child blockage, right? Because again, when the inner child is expressive, right? It's creative. It wants to creatively solve challenges. It doesn't want to stagnate challenges for decades, right? The inner child wants to move, it wants to grow, it wants to excel, it wants to learn. But when we're blocked from our inner child because we don't want to face our shame, emotional pain, and and our feelings not being good enough, what happens is we may not feel any of that, but when we're blocked from our inner child, we don't have the creative edge or the creative solution to actually move a relationship. So when the struggle, the challenge comes up, we don't know how to move the energy in a constructive and creative way, because we don't have any sort of mastery over our own mind or mastery over our own self, right? We don't know who we are. We don't know what we want, because the inner child to us is just something of shame or emotional pain, of feelings of not being good enough, right? But when we begin to experience the human condition from a place of having a practice of self, we understand that the human condition, we came into it, all of us as people, we came into the human condition because we want to revolutionize it. Not because it's something that we experience as a child to destroy us. Something there like a destroyer, right, or a devil, right, that's just trying to destroy us all. It's something that's a pattern that is here, heavy on this planet for all human beings, that we want to revolutionize, but we'll never have the energy, the higher energy, the deeper energy, the deeper breath to revolutionize that when we blocked from our inner child because of the fear, the deep fear in the human condition, and leveling up beyond the human condition, right? We must awaken, we must activate or agitate, we must repair and recover from the human condition before we can begin to step into our authentic embodiment in this human life. And that road, for many people, it's not an easy road. But those who take it and have that spiritual victory, you become in relationship with another human being. They become quite just amazing to be around, because they just bring the best out of whoever they're with, because they have this sense of mastery and sovereignty over their own life, because they went through the human condition. They went through it and through it and through it, and found learned well, experienced well, and served well their inner child's need for creative discovery, and moved beyond it, right? A lot of people are caught, they're stuck in the human condition, right? That's all they see, that's all they know, right? They don't see a way of revolutionizing it. It's like it's the past, and just keep repeating the past, and we're always just going to be in the past of our human experience, of our war, and of our aggressions and destructive patterns, right? A lot of people are like that, where they're just caught in the past of the wars of the family line, and the poverty of the past, and the trauma of the past, right? So inner child blockage is trapped, unresolved feelings, right? So a lot of us have trapped, unresolved feelings as a child, right? And again, we call it inner childhood anger, right? You can see grown men who have inner childhood anger, because that inner childhood anger, that is basically, we want to express our true nature so much. We want to be creative. We want to be imaginative so much. But when we're restricted from that, right, in our childhood, because we have shame put on us, emotional pain put on us, feelings of not being good enough put on us from caretakers, from classmates, from parents, from environment, whatever it is, we block it inside of we don't want to express that, right? We don't want to express that. And then over time we get so frustrated, because we have to express that. We have to express our inner child. We have to express our creativity, our higher imagination, our spirituality of the inner visionary. We have to. It's a must. It's evolutionary necessity. And we get so frustrated because we know we're stagnant until we begin to awaken, activate, agitate, repair, and recover from the inner childhood, inner child pain. So that trapped, unresolved feelings, it kind of comes up when we look at the mirror of a relationship where there's just a power struggle, where we look at the person and we feel this conflict inside of us. We feel this trigger inside of us, right? That brings us back to this childhood human condition, that in this power struggle with another human being, it's very, very apparent to us, the human condition that we're all in. But the great sort of dilemma in that power struggle is, yes, the human condition is there, where we're both triggered and we feel stagnant, and we have the fear and the anxiety and all the shame and the emotional pain and feelings not being good enough. And the inner childhood dilemma is not having that practice of self to revolutionize it, to bring creative discovery to it. So what happens when we have the trapped, unresolved feelings, right, that is not even about the person. It's not even about they did this, that, or the other. Because when you become within yourself just creative discovery, it doesn't matter what they do, how they do it. The challenge is your opportunity to have spiritual victory. That's all that it is. Right? It's an opportunity to have spiritual victory. But what happens when we have that trapped, unresolved feelings within us from childhood is that we create destructive habits and behaviors associated with those trapped feelings. Right? We call it self-destruct. And a power struggle can be basically a self-destruct. And that's why we feel, we can feel quite tired or drained, or we can feel very angry within ourselves, or just we just, this doesn't feel good anymore, right? It loses its pizzazz or its enthusiasm, right? Because slowly it's just we're in a self-destruct, right? We got triggered in some way, we got stagnant in some part of ourselves in the relationship, and then over time we self-destruct it, right? We self-destruct, right? That the relationship that we're having within ourselves with this just overall relationship. So destructive habits and behaviors can form, right? When we take on that human condition in the childhood, we experience it, we kind of block ourselves from it, right? We trap our feelings, and then we create these destructive habits and behaviors, and then conflict in the mirror showing us, do not like the person in the mirror, or the partner who activates the inner child wound, right? We see it as an enemy. We see it as this person is a problem. I'm a problem. This relationship is a problem. It's not going anywhere. It's stagnant. It's toxic. It's dysfunctional. It's this, that, and the other. We don't like the childhood wound that we have. We don't like the shame, emotional pain, and feelings of not being good enough that we're still carrying within us, right? And we don't have the practice of self to revolutionize any of it. So there's no creative discovery. All there is just looking in the mirror, but no tool or no way of actually transforming it. So then it's very frustrating when you look in the mirror of the person, the partner, and you just keep seeing the same struggle, but you don't see any movement. You don't see any transformation. It's very, very frustrating. Very, very frustrating, but it only takes one person to revolutionize the entire relationship, right? Only one person. So the practice of self is what I call creativity, self-psychology, movement, meditation, right? It's basically a self-worth practice, right? It's basically about repairing your inner child, recovering from the inner child pain, and really establishing the inner child in our life, right? The inner child, again, when it goes through the burdens of shame, emotional pain, and feelings of not being good enough, the human condition, the inner child can be deconstructed, right? Which is basically our self-esteem, our higher imagination, our higher creativity, our sense of expansion, our fearlessness, our dreams, right? Our intentions, our charisma, our intuition. These things can be deconstructed by the how heavy the human condition is on us when we're in our childhood, from 0 to 5, 5 to 9. We can deconstruct our excellence. So part of the practice of self is reestablishing the inner child. And the inner child, how we do that is through creativity, self-psychology, and movement meditation. So I see creativity as, again, very much feeling talented and having a craftsmanship, right? It gives you focus, it gives you concentration, right? It makes you feel beautiful, it makes you feel great, it brings you beyond yourself, it makes you feel productive, and it gives you the sense of mastery, the sense of accomplishment within yourself. And it also gives you this self-esteem when you're being creative, and it gives you this sense of purposefulness, right? And this direction towards bringing the best out of yourself. Right? Because when you're creating, you're about beauty, bringing beauty to yourself. And then self-psychology, I see that as going into yourself through contemplation, self-reflection, having a life review, and rewiring your attachments or your beliefs or your ideas of who you are and what you want. So it's about a reinvention, right? A reinvention. Creativity is a self-knowledge. Self-psychology is a reinvention of who you think you are and what you want, right? And then movement meditation, I see it as openness, right? It's like somatics, it's like Kundalini yoga. It's about deepening the breath, deepening the life force, deepening the energy, right? To give this openness, to release. It's about movement meditation is like literally I'm putting an intention to move my energy in a certain way, move my breath, move my body, move my mind in a certain way that's going to help me cut these attachments, cut these cords, and these habits, these behaviors, these patterns that have me closed off from myself, unavailable, unattentive, unaware, not paying attention, not following my intuition, not listening to myself, not caring for myself, right? To cut those attachments. And that's openness. When you have this openness within yourself, there is this nourishment that comes with it, right? This nourishment that comes to this openness, this possibility and opportunity to excel in ways that your restricted self was inhibiting. So in healing the shame, emotional pain, and feelings of not being good enough, basically our practice of self is healing the human condition, basically, right? Because that human condition is really heavy on our inner child, right? And it's going to be different. It could be very heavy, depending on what kind of childhood and geographic region and caretakers, parents, these kinds of things. And we want to recover from the inner child pain and then begin to express the inner child's desires for creative solution, balance, and excellence. Right? So if we can navigate through the human condition, navigate through it with having a practice of self, we can actually, the spiritual victory of it all is we feel whole, authentic, and we start to feel masterful. And what that does for us, when we begin to function more at the level of the version of ourself that is the inner child, our most expansive, authentic, and natural self, we start to, again, with that self-knowledge, that reinvention, and that openness, right, through the practice of self, that healing, right, the creativity, self-psychology, movement, meditation, our life becomes a creative discovery. Right? In creative discovery is about you relating to life from, there's something I need to learn, experience, and serve within myself and within a relationship that is going to bring more, that can bring more possibility and opportunity for victory, right? So it becomes that inner child expressed in a relationship. We start to have this playfulness, this direction, this intimacy, right? This sense of wonder and kindredness, and this sense of accomplishment in the relationship. Not for exactly what it's doing, but for the higher love that it's charismatically birthing. And therefore we start to feel, moving on from the past and all the traumas and the history of our human condition, and start to move more into let me manifest, let me become an alchemist, let me become a magician, right? Let me magnetize these energies in, these creative, imaginative, visionary energies, right, into my relationship, into myself, right? Because when we talk about the future of relationship, it's really about creative collaboration. It's really about two individuals that are building prosperity and reciprocity for a future of victory. Not dwelling in the past and the problem of the past, and it is just the problems. It's really about having moved on from the problems within self, or having to have a sense of mastery or sense of creative discovery with it, a sense of, again, a practice of self that gives them that intention, charisma, and intuition to be able to move into the future, right? With a sense of alchemy, manifestation, possibility, opportunity for victory, right? In step by step, in establishing, right? Establishing, like blooming one's creativity, self-psychology, and movement meditation. That's going to give them the deepest energy, the deepest breath, the deepest life force that they could possibly have as a human being, so that victory of their future, they have the spiritual victory now to be able to build it, right? To build it. And that's what we want. We all want to build a future that is going to give us a sense of spiritual victory, right? Not just for ourselves, but for our ancestors, our lineage, our family, humanity, right? So it gives us a sense of expansiveness. So again, the practice of self is kind of the main thing, right? The main thing that's going to get the conflict or friction into creative discovery, right? That's going to have us asking these questions that I have written down, these 3 questions. When we're focusing on our creativity, self-psychology, and movement meditation, these 3 questions become very, very prominent. And they become very, very much a mastery for us. And the questions are, how can I better nourish myself, right? You can't get anywhere if you have no energy. That's just basically a fact. Basic scientific, you can't get anywhere without energy. How can I better nourish myself, right? What is my destructive habit, constructive habit, and wise habit? So we're looking at the negative mind, the positive mind, and the neutral mind, right? That's like a self-psychology, right? The first question is for your creativity. How can I better nourish myself? When you're creative, you're well-nourished, right? In the mind, body, spirit, everywhere, aura, everywhere. What is my destructive habit, constructive habit, and wise habit? Again, the self-psychology, you're looking at the negative mind and how you're feeding that negative mind, and that sort of reparenting of that negative mind. The constructive habit is looking at the positive mind, right, and how it's working for you, right? And then looking at the wise habit, which is that neutral mind, which is basically you're leveling up from the negative mind and the positive mind, and you're beginning to look at things not from a curse or blessing, but a point of self-knowledge, right? Gaining wisdom, right? Having a perception that you're not attached to, you're not bound to, but you are able to revolutionize through your direction. And then the last question is, how can I bring the best out of my partner for creative solution to challenge? And that very much has to do with movement meditation, right? How can I bring the best out of my partner for creative solution to challenge? So again, movement meditation is like you're releasing, you're wanting to create this openness. You wanting to release this stagnant energy associated within yourself and in the connection. And that's a part of movement meditation, right? And creative solution is about having an intention, a charisma, and also having intuition, right? To challenge, right? Because challenges are going to come. And when a challenge comes, I mean, we all need to just go cave into all our, let our negative mind rule us, and the problems and the human condition all of a sudden just becomes this big deal. Just because we have a challenge doesn't mean the human condition needs to become such a big deal to us, that we need to take it so personally and make it this big old serious thing, and why it's destroying us, and just really indulge in it, right? When the challenge comes, it's simply an opportunity, a chance for us to experience our spiritual victory. But we cannot have that spiritual victory without a tool, without a sort of a creative solution, right? That we have within ourselves when we start to have this openness, right? We start to have this openness within ourselves, right? And that gives us this clarity of a mind, and that gives us this sort of, I want to serve my infinity. I want to serve your infinity, right? I want to have an intention. I want to be charismatic. I want to be intuitive with my choices, with this challenge. Because this challenge is helping me to better love myself, have unconditional love for myself, and better rise, right? Better rise into the authentic embodiment that I want to be, and that I want this relationship to be. So this is very much you can say a blueprint to navigating through a power struggle. From power struggle, which is inner child blockage, to the trapped, unresolved feelings that give us destructive habits and behaviors. The conflict with mirror, which is the conflict with the partner that we like, this is just stagnant, or triggers, and this isn't moving, it's not going anywhere, and these kinds of things, to creating a practice of self, right, which is creativity, self-psychology, movement, meditation. And then the conflict with another human or relationship becomes creative discovery, right? When we're nourished, we have energy, deep lifeline, life force, deep prana, right? We're very nourished, right? We feel very creative. We feel very accomplished. We have this sense of victory. And when we really put in this high level of a victory within ourselves through our creativity, that's just automatically going to put us in a aura projection of wherever I go, I am creatively serving whatever it is. And then when you really have this sense of sovereignty over the negative mind, positive mind, and neutral mind, the sense of sovereignty, the sense of life review, the sense of overview, the sense of I am not attached, I'm non-attached, and I'm just reviewing to better discover my ways in which I destroy myself, in which I create myself, right? And therefore having this sort of sense of mastery in me that brings the best out of me, and therefore wherever I go, whoever I'm with, or whatever challenge it is I'm presented with, I have this intention, this charisma, and this intuitive power that is very good at turning the conflict into a creative discovery. And that's a psychic gift. That's a psyche power that not too many people have. Because most people are in the power struggle, they're just caught in stagnancy. They don't understand the psyche of themselves. They don't understand the psyche of another person. And they're just kind of caught in the struggle of it all. And the whole stagnancy and the kind of mayhem and the childhood problem, the problem. And then they don't have sovereignty over their negative, positive, neutral mind. Right? And they have no idea how to bring the best of themselves. I mean, the best of yourself is basically your highest energy state, when you're high energy, when you're prana, you have deep life force, you have deep energy That's the best version of yourself, because when you have a very deep life force, a very deep prana, a very deep energy, you're very, very beautiful. Meaning, when you look at young kids, they're so beautiful. It's because they have like limitless supply of energy. They are tapping into their infinity, right? And when we are, in our practice of self, we're tapping into our infinity. We're tapping into our artistry. We're tapping into the human soul, the spirituality of the inner visionary. We're working on our dreams. We're working on the visions. We're working on intuition. We're working on having self-esteem. And we're doing it all through our attentiveness to the inner child, right? Our self-knowledge, reinvention, and openness that is the inner child, and really reestablishing that and accepting that and embracing that. And that gives us this sense of this grit, this fearlessness, right? And this sense of, we're not about the past. The power struggle is the past, and the restriction of the past, and limitation, and all the traumas, and all of the human condition that has everything to do with past emotional pain, shame, and feelings of not being good enough. Everything about the past. And that's where the inner child is so much a futurist, because the inner child is like, let me connect with realities of higher dimensions, realities of the future. Right? I'm a dreamer. I'm a visionary. I'm a creative mind. I don't want to indulge in the past. I want to move on from the past. I want to be a futurist. I want to move into the human condition that's resolved, and the human condition that is about liberty, and about the human condition that is at the next level. Right? The inner child, those who have a really strong inner child, are about the next level of human condition. They're about, let's level up beyond the past and emotional pain, and let me get into the future of the higher dimensions of human, the consciousness, the imagination, the creativity, the victory of human. Not the restriction, the limitation, and all the entrapments, and all of the sort of weakness of human. The inner child is all, let me get into the strength of human. And those people who have this sort of inner child spirit to them, or just inner child embodiment, right? They tend to have this head of the trend, or they have this artistry that's like 3 decades ahead of their time, or they just have this mind, or this life force, or this just energy that is very much directed towards using the intuitive power to refashion the psyche, so that the psyche is can take in higher energy, right? So it's like refashioning the psyche so the psyche can take in higher energy, because the psyche cannot take in higher energy as long as there's all this human condition about the past, emotional pain, shame, and feelings not being good enough. It blocks it. The sort of psyche, the code of it is not compatible with higher energy of like a futurist sort of higher dimension of earth kind of thing. Right? So it's really about going into that psyche, or that subconscious, right? The subconscious psyche, and really reparenting the whole thing through intuitive power, so that the psyche can now have this you could say self-knowledge, reinvention, openness, which is basically you're renovating an old, dusty, stale, stagnant house into a container, a vessel that's now able, with the whole feng shui and the sort of household mandala that is your vessel, your body, so that it can take in higher energy, higher channels, higher wisdom, psychic abilities, artistry, creativity that is of a futurist nature. Right? We talk about where, there's a lot of people who really, they can channel art, they can channel all kinds of things, very, very visionary, powerful beings, because their psyche they refashion the psyche of the human condition in the past, and all of that code, right, that's very restricted and very closed off, and they've basically refashioned it through the intuitive power. So now that the subconscious psyche can take in higher energy, can absorb it, can kind of settle it, and then begin to sort of embed it into the human cell, into the human structure of the mind and the aura and the body. Very, very interesting. So I wanted to share this with you guys to give you, again, this blueprint of, to open your mind so that you can start to better navigate your human condition, right? Your inner child pain, the power struggle you have in relationships, so that you can create a practice of self. Again, creativity, self-psychology, movement, meditation, so that you can start to get into a deeper energy, a deeper prana, a deeper life force, so that you can have an intuitive power, so you can start to target the subconscious psyche, which is the childhood. You can start to target the subconscious childhood, which is the subconscious psyche that is the childhood, that has to do with the past of human genetics, right? The human genetics, so that you can begin to refashion your subconscious psyche using intuitive power to begin to basically reparent the psyche, so that it's more on a futurist, design, right, where you can start to really, the psyche just naturally takes in these sort of higher energies and can hold it and structure it in the mind and the body and the aura, and therefore experience more of your creativity and less of your past, and the past of your parents and your grandparents and the ancestors and all the traumas and curses and all the challenges and struggles that you and thousands of versions of you in your past history have undergone and endured, right? So that your psyche can be more of a futurist of creativity rather than stagnancy of past. So that your psyche is more inclined, right? More inclined to bring in, right, a self-knowledge, a reinvention, an openness, to hold that, and less inclined to, in this subconscious psyche, to, pattern itself, take in itself through past memories and past emotional conditions that create all these restrictions, and then create this lack of energy and low prana and this low life force, right? Because a lot of us, that's where we come from, right? We come from a human condition that was in the dark age. And in the dark age, you bet we experienced a lot of our shame, emotional pain, and feelings of not being good enough. But that's not where we're meant to sit. We're not meant to be triggered and then just stagnate there. We're meant to be triggered. We're meant to stagnate. We're meant to have a practice of self. We're meant to have spiritual victory. And then we're meant to become the futurist of our creative discovery. That's kind of the pathway that I see for us. So I'm going to leave you guys with this, and Sat Nam.